You're so afraid that you're not going to make it. You're so fearful that with all your application of the lessons, your attendance at classes, thinking about things, trying to get your mind headed in a certain spiritual direction, beneath all your frantic work and unseen by you is the haunting declaration that your energy, your time, and what you call your devotion, you're afraid it's going to be wasted, and you don't like to put out energy where there will be no reward. When you think, I am not going to arrive home, as is illustrated, when you think, I am not going to set myself free or let the truth set me free, I want you to understand right now that the coursing of that very worry and anxiety and frustration, the very coursing of that through you is what prevents you from making it. The self is forever anxious about itself, about its destination, about its acquisitions, about its securities. And it always appeals to its own level of thought, of emotion, of frantic, frenzied action. It always appeals to thought to rescue it. And the very appeal will be answered, which is your tragedy. If you say, if you scream out, if you shudder, if you quake and say, am I ever going to get this? Or am I going to continue with this tension forevermore? Your very saying of that, I am telling you, is what prevents you from breaking through, because you have made your choice. Out of ignorance, out of not seeing, out of the mechanical flow and unfolding of your life, out of that and in that, right in the center of that, is what you have loved. Therefore, look at the conclusion we have already. That you're pining and yearning. Now, look, this is not on the surface. On the surface, you go to parties. Either a physical party with punch and cookies and dancing, or a party in your own mind. And the noise of the party is so loud that you don't see what I am trying to explain to you now, which again is any wish on the part of your frantic nature to free itself, any wish is what destroys your possibility for breaking out. It is not necessary for you to any longer be deceived by the deception you are now permitting through ignorance and through laziness and through a wish to keep everything going the way it has going. You don't want to see what would shock you. Therefore, you are going to have to do something you have never done before and which you don't want to do, which is, believe me, it is the last thing that your nature wants to do, which is to give itself up. Now see, there is a part of you, and if it wasn't for this fact I'm going to tell you now, it would be a pretty dreadful condition. There is a part of you which you can call, for now, you can call the conscious chooser. It isn't very conscious, but it can grow after a while. But you have to start somewhere to describe this bit of light. And this bit of conscious choosing, which it grows, is nourished by knowledge, by a willingness to give up. It is this bit of light that can look down on and understand what I have been explaining, which is the desperate cry, am I going to make it or not? The desperate cry, you can understand that that is the entire problem. This means, look what it means, that the next time you, with that sentry so alert while you're walking down the street, while you're having dinner, any time goes, that sentry catches you in your private despair. The party came to an end, and you let a little time lapse, about 5 minutes between the parties in your mind. Right in that little lapse, because you haven't been able to think of the next exciting event, the party, right in that lapse, the sentry can come in and catch you in your anguish. Do you know how deep your tears are hidden? Do you know one word can set you off and put you in despair and put an end to that party awful fast, can it? You ever had your party interrupted? You know, you're dancing around the floor. You've got your drink in your hand and your hat on your head and the confetti on your shoulders. When did it happen? About a week after you got married? When did it happen? About a month after you met that new boyfriend, girlfriend? Or you got out of college? You'd finished in military service? And for a minute, you were caught between parties, and you see the emptiness of your life, and at that minute, because the sentry doesn't stay there and watch and see what happens, you go into your anxiety and you say, I've been coming for years and nothing changes. I know that. I know that you haven't begun to be free of this mad flow that's going on inside of you that makes your exterior life what it is. And so we have the very sad story of you repeating the tragic drama. No rest for the weary actor, huh? No rest for the weary actress. She has to go back on stage again every morning at 8 o'clock down at the office. All day long in front of the family. You want to get out of it, but you can't even face the fact that there's something in you that says, I want out. Then you'd feel guilty and ashamed. You'd better investigate getting out of what you got into. Oh, you know what? You're in that situation, that dreadful domestic tragedy, that dreadful internal tragedy. Do you know what? Truth itself is just waiting for you to stop in mid-step, right in the middle of that party, stop in the middle of it and ask, what am I doing here? You've been so badly deceived into thinking that you have to be there that you never question it. All the world inside of you, all that evil world inside of you, and all that evil world outside of you is allied. I told you the odds were 1,000,000,000 to 1 against you. waking up. All the odds against you, and you have taken it as permanent. You've taken it as real. You've taken it as something you have to do. Otherwise, what will people think of me if I pause right in the middle of that mad party with 40 or 50 people around there all drinking and screaming and being crude and being evil? All those people are watching me out of the corner of their eye to see if I'm going along with them, and they don't have to watch very long because I am. What will I think if I pause right in the middle of the room with my empty glass going over to refill it? What would they think if I walked over to the table and set the glass down and took off their hat and brushed the confetti off my shoulders? What would they think if I did that? And without even saying goodbye, I walked out and I stayed out. You don't have the courage to do that. And that's why you are miserable. Oh, I know very well that you don't go to mad parties every night, and you don't have all these friends, so you don't do it physically maybe so much. But it'd be a good idea for you to find out where physically out in your environment what would be comparable to the party, and you just walk out of it and see how afraid you are. You don't even know that. You don't even know you're supposed to walk out. I am telling you that you must for your sanity's sake. But we're talking about the party inside your own emotional system, are we not? We're talking about all the scenes that you've put up in your mind, where you meet someone and already the mechanical responses begin to work, all the right things to say. You're never natural. You're never yourself. You're always someone else. You're someone else you were told to be when you were 3 years old. When you were 3 years old, you were told how to behave by a sick society, and you're still obeying that order, that impulse, and you don't know it. No one in reality, nothing in truth says that you have to stay on the dance floor at the party and drinking and screaming like the rest of them. No one says that you have to stay there and be unconsciously scared of life, and of course scared of when the party is over. How about that? People are afraid the party is over when they've worked all their life at a certain thing and they retire after so many years. Have you ever seen anyone fall apart after they retire? You've seen them fall apart up here. They get so anxious they don't know what to do because they were obeying mechanical rules to go down to the office for 20, 30, 40 years. And they no longer have a slave driver to tell them what to do. And they get up on their first retirement morning, and they look around. He looks around for someone with a whip to drive him, and there's no one there. And he cries because there's no one there to whip him and tell him what to do. This is the tragedy of not having lived your own life, of not having walked out on so many parties that you finally understand that you're supposed to be outside of them, not in them. So you see, all of us are victims of what we have been told, and you have never questioned it. You've never challenged all those people in the past, very close to you, some people. You've never questioned the traditions of society, their rituals, religious or whatever they might be, the educational. You have never said to yourself, is it possible that there's something in me that is really right that is trying to show me what is wrong? Oh, what an explosion, a series of explosions you're going to have to go through if you're going to understand that you can indeed, right in the middle of everybody calling your precious name out on the party floor, that you can indeed can indeed know what you must do, which is to walk out and let them scream all they want. Why do you think they want you there? For their own benefit. They want to use you. Look, one liar needs another liar. And if one liar leaves the party because he doesn't want to be a liar anymore, that's one less person to support them in their life tragedy. And they're afraid that you go, and maybe someone else will go. And so, of course, what they do in order to revive their spirits and to give themselves another mad party is to get angry with you or criticize you or whatever. And remember, these criticizers are not so much out there in the world as they are inside of you. Guilt. Look at the guilt you have, which drives billions of human beings, drives them, tells them what to do. If you don't go through the ritual, the religious or the social ritual, if you don't go through that, you're not normal. You're not living the right life, the good life. And they say, can millions of human beings be wrong? Oh, you don't know how wrong they are. But you know how wrong you have felt. And you see how wrong you have felt, and you ask yourself where that came from. God has not placed you in this world to be forever at the mercy of you and of them. Here again, where that choice comes in, you can put yourself on the side of truth where it can begin to teach you, or you can say, I'm going to remain on my own side. And oh, what a repetition you will have. See, what's your life been the last year? I'll tell you exactly what's going to be the next year. You know it. I don't have to tell you that. There's something in you that tells you that what happened on Wednesday will also happen on Thursday, unless your nature has changed. You know that. And when your nature changes, you will also equally and beautifully know you're not going to behave on Thursday like you did on Wednesday, because there's another person living inside of you. There's someone who's beginning to know better. Because that person, having got out of the noisy party and gone out and walked all alone by himself, your mind can begin to function freely without the noise. Of course, you take the noise of the party with you. It follows you down the street for a mile or 2 or 3 or 4. You walk long enough all alone and don't come back, the noise will finally disappear out of your mind, and with that will come clarity. Imagine a bunch of people who own boats. They're out in the ocean. And every day they go out in the boats and they fish and they sail around and enjoy themselves. And they've set up a warning system on shore whereby a certain 2 or 3 people on shore who have their weather charts and are in contact with the weather bureaus and all that. These people in the weather station right on shore have been instructed to send warning signals, early warning signals of storm out there in the ocean. So that if it's going to be stormy in a few hours, they can head for shore immediately. So they go out there, and they have a good time. They fish and they drink out there in the boats and sail madly around. But they get caught in the storm every day, just like you. They get caught, the storm comes down and wrecks the boats, and they finally struggle to shore. And when they go to the weather station and say, what happened? You were supposed to instruct us. We didn't hear the signal. We didn't see the light. We didn't catch you, flags and all that, the way you signal. We didn't catch that. How come? You were supposed to warn us, to protect us of an approaching storm. And you know what they said? The 2 or 3 men and women operating the warning system. They said it was your fault. You weren't watching. You were having too much fun. You didn't interpret right. You misread. We sent you the warning signals and you didn't pay any attention. It was your fault. So they said, well, okay, maybe it was. Maybe there's something wrong with us. So they'd go out again. Same thing happened again. All of a sudden, caught in a storm, the boat battered, and they finally struggle in, all wet and miserable. And they go to the warning station again, and ask the same question and they get the same answer. Oh, this happens over and over and over. Now you see, I'm talking about very stupid boaters, sailors. People who don't have any intelligence at all. People who indeed go out there and think only of one thing, of the fun they're going to have, and they never notice the signals. However, after a while, they began to notice something. And what they noticed was that every time they went into the warning station, weather warning station, that the people in there always said, "It is your fault." Never was it their fault that they were lax or sent wrong signals. Never under any conditions it was their fault. It was always the fault of the boaters. And they could understand how they were careless, how they were having too much fun to notice. But they also noticed that it was never the fault of the people at the weather station. And they said, even on the law of mathematics, of chance, it couldn't be 100% our fault, could it be? They are always right, and we are always wrong. There's something wrong. So what they did, as all tragic sailors should do, was to investigate the people at the warning station. They checked their background. They checked why they had set up the warning system in the first place and hired themselves out to the boaters. They looked very carefully into the personality, into the character. And why have you failed to do this? But on with the story. And what they found out was that these people were doing the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do. In other words, the boaters were paying the people in the warning station, they were paying them for betraying them. And you are paying people who betray you and you don't see it. But again, back to the illustration. They found out that in one way or another, all the people running the station were their enemies. They just set it up for various tricks to get boat repair bills, make money on boat repairs. They were enemies for some imagined or real insult of years ago. All the people who are supposed to, I know this is familiar to you, but you better make it personally familiar. All these people who were supposed to warn them and save them and keep them from being battered, the very people who were supposed to save them were the people who were doing them the most damage. You had better check in and see who you're trusting. You had better see where you're afraid to look at people and see how vicious they really are and what they are doing against you. You don't see it because you are part of it. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So I will correct that oversight. You are also in the warning station. You are one of the people there as well as the people out on the boats. Look what that is called. It is called unseen self-betrayal. If it happens to you, it happens because of you. If it happens to you, it happens because of you. Anyway, the boaters, once they understood, they had no problems anymore, right? They cleaned out the warning system and put right people in there, true people, because they could now know what a true person was because they're becoming true themselves. Now listen to what you're going to have to do. Let's see if you want to do it and see if you understand it. If you don't want to be battered out there anymore with all these tragedies, you're going to have to prove that your present perceptions are all wrong. You yourself, of yourself, your own effort, your own willingness, your own hard action, you are going to have to prove that your present perceptions are wrong. Well, don't you get battered? Don't you indeed get the wrong signals from the shore? Don't you indeed find yourself out there wondering what it's all about? See, the perception is that someone is taking care of you. Someone outside of you is concerned for your welfare. I want you to know, of the 4 billion human beings on earth, there is not a single human nature that cares for you. As a matter of fact, they are doing the exact opposite of what they say. This includes everyone. In government, in religion, in education, in homes, go on down the list. And everyone that you think you can trust, you can't trust. You know, would you agree that human beings are pretty stupid? That they learn slow? Wouldn't you think that after being battered, the boat's half wrecked, 30, 40 years, wouldn't you think that someone on that boat would have the intelligence to investigate what's going on on shore there in the warning station? Which is you, by the way. Wouldn't you think someone would say, I better check my perceptions. I have perceived in my own delusion that they are going to warn me, and they haven't done so. Isn't it about time then that you take your mind off of the party, and the party's on the boat too, isn't it? You take your mind off the party on the boat and look until you can understand that you have been sent wrong signals from yourself for all this time. You see, this is very practical. If you do that, if you see that the thoughts you're obeying and the words you are saying dictated by a wrong mind, if you see that you have a wrong perception of them, that is, you think that they're trustworthy, and you find out they can't be trustworthy because they get you into trouble all the time, wouldn't you say, I'd better dig in and better find another source of guidance, of inspiration? The word perception is very important to understand, and we'll look into it just a little bit. True perception is seeing without the self. True perception is seeing without the self. This means that when you see life in general, when you see yourself, when you see actions, when you see anything with perfect clarity, that there is no seer at all. There is a seer, a false perceiver, when you are out in the boat with your fun and your parties, and you half glance toward shore and say, I'm okay because something is taking care of me. And in the world that translates as a man or a woman saying, I'm okay because my financial security, I got a lot of money, my friends, I'm still young, all the things that make up yourself, you say they are taking care of me. That is perception, false perception by the self, by time, bringing time into it and bringing the future into it. I'm going to be okay tomorrow because I'm okay today. You're not okay today, therefore you will not be okay tomorrow. You will simply have hidden the terror of what's going to unfold tomorrow. So seeing without the intellectually built self is true perception, therefore a perception in which there is no self-concern because there's no self-seeing. Now, you can't understand what I'm telling you. You can understand the words, you can understand the theory, which is good, but you can't do what you're hearing because you still insist on your parties instead of looking toward shore, looking toward your false source of strength, wanting to still play the games out there. You can and should, right here now, take your mind. even in a small way, we'll do. Or, you know what's the most difficult thing for a human being to do? Let me tell you. We're having a party on the boat now out there. There's just a big boat. A lot of people out there. 40, 50 people out there, just as in the house that we're in a while back. 40 people out there, and the party is in full swing with all the drinks and all the sexual looks. Sometime you go to a group of people, watch for unconscious sexual looks. And if you're able to see them, you'll see dozens of them in one night. All this is going on. And here's a man, one man out of the whole group, who's a little bit suspicious. And he's standing with his back to the shore, standing on the deck for the moment, where you can see all the people there. He's standing with his back to the shore, and he's listening to the music, and he's got his drink. And he sees something to eat on the snack table over there. There's a pretty girl over there with a pretty pink dress on. And all this is crowding through his mind. The most difficult thing for him to do, it's to take his eyes off of that and to turn his head around and look in the opposite direction, so that he can begin to confirm what he suspects, that he's been misled by himself. And all those people at the party are confirming his delusion. They're saying, it isn't delusion, this is real life. Live it up and all that. Now, let me tell you what to do. And now I'll tell you, first of all, that you actually can do it. It can be done. And I know you're following the symbolism of this. But you're looking at the party, and it's so exciting and so nice. All the excitements and the glitter out there on the boat there in the big cabin where they're all having fun. You know what you have to do, but you don't want to do it, do you? Now listen to me. Listen to me. You can still do it. All you have to do is do it. All you have to do is go ahead. Look, no, I'm not going to do it. Do it anyway. Go through the agony. You know, if you go so far, you can't see the drinks anymore. You go a little farther, you can't see the food anymore. A little bit more, you can't see the pretty girl in the pink dress anymore. Go through the agony of cutting them out. You'll go through hell, but I'll tell you, you'll know you're going through hell. And that's the first time that has ever happened to you in your life. That is what breaks down the mechanical machine that has taken over your inner nature with all its chugging and its noise and its clanking. That is what cuts off the power for just 1 second. And in that 1 second where the power is cut off, you will feel it, you will know it. And then your head goes back again. Not quite as far as it was before, just one little fraction of an inch between the two places where you start. The next time you say, I'm just going to do it. I don't care what I have to go through. I don't care if I lose that girl, if I lose that drink, if I lose the promises of all the things that I'm going to have tomorrow at the party. I don't care about that. I'm going to do it anyway. And you do it anyway. And you go again, and it goes out of sight again, and you go through hell again. Do it again the next day, do it again the next day, do it again the next day. Pretty soon, eternity, you'll see the false signals. And you know what you'll do? Clothes and all. You'll go over to the edge of the boat and jump off and swim to shore. Oh, let's start swimming now. There's something wrong with those who are supposed to change this world from wrongness to rightness. Now, in a very simple opening statement like that, you can see the beginning of the path which, if you start to walk it, the beginning of the path that will take you completely away from the nervous state that you are in right now. From the weakness that you have right now, which makes you look nervously and frantically around this world and wonder where you're going to find a champion. See, you don't see that. You go through your whole day not knowing what is going on, and yet you say, I want the answers. How can you find the answer when you don't even know the problem? Instead of frantically looking around for a champion to defend you, to protect you, why don't you take a look at this anxious state you have and ask why it exists as it does? Now, I told you at the very start that the people who are trying to straighten out the world have to straighten themselves out first, and that's the last thing they're going to do, so you can't count on them. This means you are going to have to, for the first time in your life, face the overwhelming evidence that is right in front of your eyes to the fact that the whole world is indeed utterly mad. That world out there is guilty of being wrong. Because you don't understand this, because you will not face the evidence of it, because you don't understand it, you don't see how you're self-victimized by having the very same things wrong in you that you accuse the world of having. I want you to know right now that there is no such thing as two worlds. There is no such thing as you in your, what you call, innocent world, and the guilty world out there. I want you to know, and I want you to understand, start to understand, that there exists only one world, and you are it. And what you are, with your weakness and your frantic looking around for answers, what you are is exactly what your world is out there. I know you don't understand this. I know that you don't understand that what you see out there and what scares you is you and nothing else. When you see that world out there, you are seeing you and absolutely nothing else, because there's only one thing. If you can think a little clearly toward this now, you'll see where this could lead to, where this path could lead to. That if you feel that that parent out there, that employer, that world in general, if you feel that they have power over you to hurt you, to make you feel insecure, if you feel that, you are feeling your own experiences, your own emotions, and absolutely nothing else. Look, please, look. You glance out there and you look at that ex-wife or ex-husband. You think of that terrible experience that you've gone through. Who is experiencing the pain at the moment it happens? You and no one else. Look how obvious it is, and you won't see it. That's because you have a divided mind. That's because you say, I am here and they are there, and they cause that to happen. As if they can cause anything to happen. You want it to happen or you wouldn't have it. If you suffered today, you deliberately invited it into your life. You wanted to feel something, didn't you? You don't have the courage. You don't have the adventurous spirit that says, I am no longer going to feel, experience, suffer what I've always suffered for the sake of having a repetitious experience because it's a familiar thing and the only thing I know. I am no longer going to demand a repetition of me just to see what happens. I'm going to give it up. I told you, and this is the third time I'm telling you, the evidence of the world's insanity, which is your own. You see, if you are sane, you can understand the world's insanity and not have a single pain over it. You're all pained, aren't you? You suffer. You cry a lot and you're nervous a lot. Every day 1,000 wrong feelings go through you. You know, the little ones, just the little ones, they stab you and run because you have permitted it. See, you are deceived because you want to be. You have chosen to close your eyes to the madness out there, because if you can close it to the madness out there, you won't have to face it in you. And this is what you want to do above all else. This violent world. Do you watch the television news? Do you look at those newspapers and see one man, one woman after another standing up on those platforms in those great institutions? And what they are doing is lying the world into the doom that it is in. Well, does that fact in itself scare you? Don't you understand why we're talking about the problem? We're talking about the problem, the difficulty, the chaos, because you have to see that there's no other source of it for you except you. If you dissolve the self that is the difficulty itself, where is the difficulty? Oh, what a hardened human habit to look out there and react with trembling, with attributing power, with attributing authority to the world, and giving it the opportunity to hurt you as you have been used to being hurt, so that you'll have a familiar experience. It is about time, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand that you have been kidded so often and so long that you have said, as long as I don't understand something, I might as well stay just where I am, lest things get worse. I'm here to tell you, listening to me, right here physically tonight and on this tape, I want you to know that things couldn't be much worse than they are right now with you. And I'll tell you why. Because you're all lost, every single one of you. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what life is all about. Anyone can do anything to you, and you meekly submit. Is there one of you here tonight that's going to rebel in the right way? Rebel against the hoodwinking, the terrible things that this world has indeed done to you, but with your consent. Let me tell you a story, illustrative story. A Western movie on TV somewhere. Here's a outlaw robbed a stagecoach and assaulted the passengers. He was caught. The sheriff came along with a posse and caught the robber. They brought him in for trial. Here's the old-fashioned courtroom, probably a corner of the bar or something, saloon. And they set up the trial for this robber. And the evidence against him was overwhelming. All kind of witnesses caught him with the loot, on and on. Absolutely, there was the spectators out there in the audience looking at it, and they said, of course, the man's guilty. What else? Look at all the things they caught him with. The jury found him innocent. Why would a jury find a guilty man innocent? Because they were corrupt, because they'd been bribed, they'd been bought. And for their own personal selfish interest, they found the man who was guilty, actually guilty, they found him innocent. Now put yourself in the place of the audience. Put yourself in the place of yourself. Here's all the spectators out in the chairs and back watching the trial. And they say, surely this man must be guilty. Look at all the things they got on him. There it is, right in front of us. He's guilty. But the corrupt jury found him innocent. Look at those poor, pathetic human beings, including you, who, because corruption says the man was innocent when he was really guilty, it puts them in doubt, and they accept that doubt instead of their own God-given intelligence to think clearly and to see clearly for themselves what was the fact of the matter. This corrupt world is voting the world innocent. Well, we've got the peace organizations. We're going to straighten these international problems out. And we've got prayer groups around the world, and we've got goodwill. And you swallow it whole, don't you? Don't you know, let's go a little bit in history a little bit, since we're back in that way a little bit. Do you understand, really understand there's no such thing as heroes? Do you understand that? The man who led the biggest army, he's a hero. And he's built up in history. And all the children see the statues to him. Or famous philanthropists, social leaders who are supposed to have done so much for other people. They didn't do a thing but contribute to the wreckage. You still have idols, you still have heroes. That is because you have no life of your own. That is because you're always looking outside of yourself. And instead of seeing the evidence of the guilt as that robber was, seeing the evidence of guilt, you see something that you want to cling to. See, listen, let's see if you can understand this. Truth, reality, God, which exists, which is a reality, will take your life and take your thinking and take your actions and reverse them 100%. Truth will do that for you, providing you no longer lift one finger to do anything for yourself. Providing you no longer want any kind of heroes, providing you're no longer going to look to any other human being for strength or guidance, and providing that you no longer unconsciously worship yourself. And there is where the collision comes in. Because you don't even know you're doing it. You don't know that thinking about yourself all day long and your problems, you don't know that that's self-worship. Why don't you see that it is? You don't know that a recitation of your difficulties to other people and wearing them out, you don't know that that is self-worship. You don't know that your depression and your heavy spirit and your nervous eyes, you don't know that that is self-worship. And to make it worse, you don't want to know it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, which is it? You or something else? Never mind what that something else is, you don't know. There's no way you can know. You can only think about it and invent your own heroes and saviors and remain a vicious, lost, cruel human being. Don't you understand? Every time you lash out at the world, you're lashing at yourself. Don't you understand? Every time you defend yourself, you're saying, I am so real, I'm so solid, I'm so marvelous, that I better defend this precious bit of goods that I have here. Defending something you can barely stand living with. Don't you intensely dislike going around with your own company? Of course you do. How's that for a contradiction? See, you don't love yourself. Not really. You don't know what love is. What you do is like the thrill of whatever happens to you, whether it's a so-called negative thing or a so-called positive thing. That being yourself, that is what you treasure. That is what you want. And I think I'd better get a little stronger with you, because I can sense some of you here. Please, there is something better than you enjoying the pain of being the wrong, vicious, corrupt person that you are. There is something better. There is something superior. There is something different. You don't have to be afraid of letting go of what you think you are. I know you. I know exactly why you cling to your old ways. I know that you're terrified of letting go. You're so terrified and so stupid that you will fight God himself and not even knowing what you are doing. Don't you dare sit there and insist one more second longer. Don't you dare again insist that your pain is right. You're in for a long, long time of horrible self-convincing that will never, never work. Don't you dare listen to this talk with one part of you, an unconscious part of you, demanding that your present state be the right state. Don't you dare look at that fear that you have of these words, which you do because they are truthful words. Don't you dare any longer sit there and think that it's necessary for you to cling to your resistance. I'll make it stronger. Why are all of you who's listening to me right now clinging and clutching to yourself as if it's the only thing there is? That is a monstrous lie which you have believed long enough. Please have an ounce of intelligence to let it go. How can you sit there and think unconsciously. How can you sit there and say that misery is happiness? The reason you do that is because never having tasted happiness at all, you have to put wrong labels on what you now have and call your fierce self-defense, call that happiness, because you're fighting for your survival. Would you like to know what you're really fighting for? You know it. Some of you sense it, don't you? Look, nothing changes in your day, does it? It's the same day. Few changes in exterior experiences, but the same old reactions to them. So nothing changes in you. Now, if nothing changes, if you're not free of yourself and don't know what real happiness is, then obviously you must be doing something wrong with yourself regarding your presently painful condition. Right? Look, now what could be more logical than that? If you don't get rid of your hatred, which you're loaded with, and suppressed like everything else is, you're left out, and all that nonsense. If you still have suppressed hatred, and sometimes it boils over, doesn't it? When you're all alone, you get mad all alone, don't you? You throw things across the room. You say bad words. Yeah, don't kid me. I know you. Oh, I know you. Now, if nothing changes, then could you have the intelligence to say, I have been working in the wrong way trying to make myself feel right? Going on for a long time now, isn't it? Now, we're going to expose the devil right now. Who has you in his power? Don't kid me about that either. I know you. If you go out of here and never come back, he's got you forever. If you don't come back to truth, that is. This fear that you have of releasing your traditional thoughts, this fear you have of dropping your defenses, this anxiety you have that truth is going to come in and change your life, this fear that you have is simply and nothing but a bad little habit that you cling to because you simply don't know any better. Now, maybe in the past you've had a bad habit, whatever it is, and you got rid of it in some way. And you can do the same thing with the habit of continuing to be the only enemy you have ever had in this life. Never mind your acquisition of experiences that hurt you pretty badly. Never mind the labels you put on yourself of being a failure, of being defeated, of being a hypocrite. You're not a hypocrite. In reality, you're not a hypocrite. In reality, you're nothing at all. Try to see that you must begin to say, as long as I am my own rescuer, heaven help me tomorrow, and tomorrow and tomorrow will be like yesterday and yesterday and yesterday. And because truth knows and understands you perfectly, you can begin to say yes to truth and no to the fear and the repetitious habits. You can begin to shift with whom you are allied. Now that's the one thing you can do, and the only thing you should do, which is to change your alliance. As long as you are allied with you, then that will, I guarantee you, guarantee the repetition of your bad experiences, of your bad dreams, of your miserably huddled little life. If you say, I will take one step, one small step away from who I think I am, if you say that, then these exercises that we give you in this class will become extremely practical and will change you. Because your step away from the darkness is an automatic step toward the light, so that when you join yourself with the little exercises up here and even physical exercises, that gives truth a chance to come in and do something for you the way you are now. You've cut yourself off from all rescue. Look, please, nothing changes. Your idea of change is to push the pain down for 5 minutes. With the dinner, the television program, the sex thoughts. That's your idea of change. You are mad. You're a lunatic. Good news. Truth knows you're a lunatic even if you don't. That's your hope. Now I'll tell you a place where you can start on all this. No longer know what you want. No longer know what you want. You know what you want, don't you? You want out. You're never going to make it that way. The person who clenches his fists and frantically cries, I want out. That's exactly what keeps the bars in place. I want out. Understand? There's no one to get out. No longer know what you want. How many of you are willing to go through a great turmoil inwardly if necessary? Go through the storm completely. I tell you, if you pass through the storm, you'll be on the other side of the storm. Now, what is more logical than that? You won't enter the storm, so you never get out of it. You have to pass through it. You fear that if you give up what you usually want, which is to be your own savior, for example, you fear that if you give that up, that you'll be lost. Now, what is more idiotic than that? Than a lost person say, if I do this, I'll be lost. You're already lost. If you run out of your own ways of rescuing yourself, if you run out of what you want, that means, this is kind of advanced, so listen to it. That means that there is no longer the repetitious churning of thoughts, emotions, even physical action. That means there's no longer the repetition of them. Now, if they are not operating, then what else is? Don't answer the question. If you answer the question, you'll be a religious hypocrite. If you answer the question, you'll be a self-deceived human being. If you give up what you want and just stay there with nothing, what do you suppose would happen to you? Shall I tell you? The illusion of you will disappear. And so will every trouble, every fear, every problem you have disappear absolutely. Because as I said at the first, if you remember, the only problem you have is you. Get rid of you and you'll get rid of all your problems. See, but you want the guarantee, don't you? You want to know what it's like on the other side? No go. All you have to do is know that you are wrong and stop right there. I absolutely guarantee you, personal guarantee, that if you will stop if you will no longer know what you want, even wanting rescue from your pain, if you no longer know that, I absolutely guarantee you that something will come into your life that is invisible, that is totally powerful. Something will come into you and you will sense it. And you'll say, something is going on. I have never had this viewpoint before. I've never had this sensing of a new direction before. But you know it's real. It is not your knowing. It is a knowing that is apart from your own intellect. It's the knowing of the Spirit of truth that you have invited into your life, which gladly answered the invitation, and that came into your life. And now you understand that there really is a totally different kind of a world that's not on a parallel with this world here, but is way up there. You know it. You don't think about it. You don't think about it. You live it. You know what that's called? That's called real religion. That's called authentic spirituality. And when you have that, you will know the purpose for which you were put here on earth. And you will know that that purpose was fulfilled in you. And you will be new. What a shame the world isn't here this morning. Because what we're going to talk about would rescue the world from itself. And that is all that the world needs, is rescue from itself, because that is all that the individual needs. But to the person going out into this world, he looks out at it and he sees the glitter and he sees all the exciting things to do. And he exclaims, "This is living. This is what I want. Surely that physical world out there is what I need." And so he chases, she chases, and goes so far in the chase that it becomes impossible after a while for the individual to ever look and study and understand what is happening to him. That is the tragedy. All your friends, your relatives, people you know, people you work with, have gone so far off the highway out into the jungle that they have lost even the faintest idea that there is a main highway to travel to go to another place besides bumping into each other inside the jungle and falling inside the pits. Now listen, we are here this morning. We are in a place where we can listen, where we can absorb, where we can stop right in the middle of the scrambling around in the vines out there in the jungle. Stop right where we are and say, wait a minute, I hear something trying to get through to me. Something that doesn't seem to be a part of that husband of mine, of that wife of mine, of my children, of my parents, of the educational system, of society. I seem to be hearing something that is saying something entirely different from what, listen to this, from what my whole life is saying. And what your life is saying is that madness and entanglement is good and necessary. We're here. Right now, we can start fresh. Right in the middle of all the madness of it, of your own mind. That's what you have, you know. You can start right in the middle of it and begin to see something different. Now what we can do, and what we're going to do this morning, is to gather information about ourselves. see where we are. And when you see where you are, see it clearly, you'll understand the mistake. And when you see the mistake, I guarantee you it will stop. And that means the end of self-punishing, self-whipping, self-enclosure where you close your eyes and wander around. And all you do is, unfortunately, is think your own thoughts. So we're going to start off by discussing a self-dominated mind. Now, slow with the phrase itself. A self-dominated mind. Now, here's what that means. It means to the ordinary, usual mind of the ordinary, usual human being that the only thing that exists is its royal mightiness. Oh, no, it doesn't say so. It doesn't say I enthrone myself as the king, mental king. Never. Because it has the possibility, it has the ability to deceive itself and to think one thing and say to another. But a self-dominated mind in itself says, now, if you don't believe what I'm going to say next, don't try to force yourself to believe it, just see it. I'm talking about your mind, the kind of mind that you have. A self-dominated mind says, I am the only mind that exists and has a right to. And if I see other human beings and events and other minds out there, I am describing to you what you're thinking. You had better pay attention. And if it sees other people out there, it, in its isolation and desperation, says, you must serve me. Well, look, if I am the monarch, then everything else is my subjects. Everyone else. Wife, you had better give me sex when I want it. Husband, you had better give me more money than you give me out of your paycheck. On down the line, every self-idolizing mind looking out and in its own delusion thinking that its royal majesty depends upon other people serving it as it demands. Well, what do you think frustrates you? What do you think makes you irritable a dozen times a day? What do you think creates sarcastic comments in your mind and in your feelings and in your exterior behavior? Shall I tell you? The thwarting of your royal majesty. When you have a demand you have set up as an absolute, the necessity, the frustration of that demand, it will happen every time, and it has happened a million times in your life, hasn't it? Are you beginning to understand what insanity is? Are you beginning to see what causes we're talking individually now, not as mass. Can you begin to see what individually causes your fear of this world? It won't obey you, will it? It won't give you what you demand. You send out your royal decree. Oh, I hope I can get that woman. I hope I can get that man. I hope the world will honor me as I feel I should be honored. Isn't it maddening that the world won't cooperate with you? Then do you see that madness is always self-induced? Starting with the false premise that you must be a dictator over the rest of the world. What do you think causes every war, every heartache, but all these egotists, everyone in their own tight little kingdom, saying, you must obey me, and the other person says, no, you've got it wrong, you must obey me. And so they fight and they lie. Oh, the pain and the agony that arises out of human beings refusing to see the simple fact that they are not using their minds properly. That they don't, look, that they don't have to induce frustration and pain. That you can understand every single difficulty you have away. And I said, every one of them, you try to think right now, you can do it if you want while I'm talking. You try to think right now of some grief, some problem, some strain, some anger that you have right now. And I will tell you that it can be understood away. Not only that, you could do it this morning if you were to let go. So we've established the fact that a self-dominating mind considers itself the king of the island. Here's a castaway out on a desert island. Look, he's cast off the ship sinks, and he goes to the island out there, and he's all alone on it. And the first thing he does was declare himself the royal emperor of it, huh? The first thing he does. Let's leave him there on the island for a minute. Look for just one thing. Your demands, your fearful demands, your very, very unpleasant demands. You send them out, nobody answers. Go back to the man on the island now and let's see what he demands. Poor, pathetic man. He bumped his head against a log when he fell off the boat. And he grabbed the log and he floated to the island. And he says, hey, this is great. This is great. No competition. And so he sets up his royal little palace consisting of a bamboo hut, palm trees, puts his royal initials over it, and it begins to dictate over all the birds and the wild creatures on the island. How marvelous! I'm the only one on the island. I knew it all along. I was unique. All I have to do is yell at that bluebird and it flies away. Now let's follow him. Demanding dominion over his own delusion-created world, demanding dominion over it, exhilarated over his power. And may I interrupt myself? Exhilarated over his power to be vicious. When you go out of here and go home for an hour or two before we go on with the other activities, while driving your car very carefully, I want you to glance at the people you see on the street and the people in the other cars. Or if you go to a grocery store, I want you to look at those people in the grocery store. And I want you to see them in a different way than you've ever saw them before. I want you to see them as lonely, lost, arrogant castaways who would never risk losing their dictatorial powers by coming to a meeting like this. That's a very fine exercise, and I want you to exercise it all the time, because I know what happens when you look out the world and you see a uniform, or you men see a pretty girl, or you see someone who's famous. Already you cease to think clearly, and you go into an old emotional reaction, and you don't even see it. Now, a castaway on the island is exhilarated over the fact that he alone exists. Look at the loneliness, the isolation. Look very carefully at what is happening to him, and then you take a close look and see that you are doing exactly the same thing, which will explain everything to you. How marvelous that I can shake my hand and the birds fly away in fear. I can walk anywhere. I can do anything. I can set up my own laws. And I can repeal those laws the next day. I have absolute power. He says, I have absolute power and I want to die. Right? See, to keep the illustration going, you see, in his sickness, he wants his solitary power, and yet he wants the companionship and the interchange of human contact. He wants that too. See the contradiction? I am alone, and yet he's isolated. Look, how far back in your own mind are you living? This man is 10,000 miles isolated out in the South Pacific. They're somewhere in a little patch of land with a few palm trees. And you're there too. That's where you're living, and you wonder why you're lonely. All dictators are lonely. They say, I am here, how marvelous. The next second they say, I am here, how hellish. I suggest also, when you go home, that you keep the word isolation in mind. Isolation having and must have all these horrible characteristics that we've covered so far. You want to live in dreamland of having power. And I'll tell you, how many times this morning already have you set up a mental movie in your mind where you told someone off? Where you're going to get the best of someone? Where someone comes to you, your royal majesty, and asks you to bestow a favor. And you graciously pat them on the head and say, granted, my son. This is called psychopathery. And if that isn't a word, it is now. So this isolation must always carry fear, must always include in it hostility. We're talking about a self-dominated mind, which is the mind which almost everyone on earth lives from. And so all these people on different little islands, say there's another island a mile away, they get their little mortars out, little cannons out, and shoot each other. Don't you come near my island. I want you, but I hate you. I'm afraid you're going to destroy my illusion of being king of the island. Don't come too close. Don't play your evil trick of calling yourself a dictator. You might expose me as being one. Wouldn't you say then that hiding out is hell? Well, how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about life? You feel so bad, you don't even know how to answer the telephone consciously. You're so caught up in yourself. Oh, the phone rings. Somebody wants me. Somebody came to me. How marvelous. King of the island. Queen of the island. And it's a phone call where somebody wants something from you. And now you have to tell a lie, don't you? You have to push them away in some way. You're never in charge of yourself on the telephone. or anywhere else. That telephone is part of the island, you understand. You can't even handle a simple phone call. Someone will lead you right. That other sickie on the other end will lead you right into a trap, and you'll start blabbing because you think you have to. Like to try that for a third exercise? To observe yourself internally right while you're talking, and you will see yourself saying, "Oh, I love it that someone called me, and I hate it that someone called me." That's the operation of an isolated mind, of a mind that doesn't understand anything. All right, now we can talk about a different kind of a mind, different from day and night. This other mind is a spirit-dominated mind. Now this means that the dictator has been eliminated. The isolation has been broken down. The false sense of self has been banished. It means that all that remains is the natural, pure, necessary parts of the mind, memory, even imagination, repetition, habit. That's all right too. Habit has a proper place in the intellect. Means that the mind, through surrender, through being tired, of being pained, the mind has simply given up. It no longer wants to be a dictator. It sees the contradiction in that. So that all that remains is the mind operating as it should operate. Now, when you were on the island, the dictator delusion operated through the mind and made it do all these ridiculous things. Wandering around giving orders to the blue jays and to the barracuda out in the surf. And somewhere along the line, right, and standing on the surf and giving an order to a barracuda, which is pretty ridiculous, isn't it? He got a glimpse of it and saw the folly of his own life and of his own mind. All right, so it has fallen away. So, in the absence of the tyrant, something else must tell the mind what to do. And it does. The difficulty at this point, you listening to this talk, is that I'm talking about something that you can't understand. And I know that, because you don't know the spirit of truth. But I can tell you to please don't misuse your imagination by believing that you do understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the spirit of truth, of reality. Suspend things. Now, when it has come back to itself, begun to become sane, at that moment in the life of the individual, God, reality, truth, sanity, comes down and gives instructions to the mind in every possible event of life, inward and outward. Oh, how astonished and delighted you are going to be when you go this far and the Spirit of truth is talking to your intellect and telling it how to behave in this world. There's just a state of understanding with a capital U. Want to understand all this? Apply what you've heard.